This is the second video in the series on developing fragments in Android. The first video was just an overview of what we're going to cover. In this video, we are going to use fragments with activities and layouts to simply replicate behavior that we currently have in an application without using fragments. In future videos, what we're going to do is we're actually going to leverage fragments to allow us to have a look and feel that is better tuned for a tablet when we're in a tablet, and then a different look and feel that's better tuned for a phone when we're in a phone. Now, to start this, it's going to be the most beneficial if I start with a project that is already active and using data and showing live data. And so for that, I'm going to take a project I've been working on recently, which is a Plant Places app I did for my fall semester 2014 class at UC. And I am going to clone this out of UC's GitHub. Now, you have to be a UC student, faculty, or staff to have access to this GitHub. But not to worry, I am going to then push it up to a public GitHub. So if you're not faculty, staff, or student, you'll be able to clone this project when I'm finished with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run back to get the clone URL, and then I'm going to go into Eclipse, and I'm going to say File and Import, and Projects from Git, and the clone URI. And while I'm importing this, I'll just say a little bit about what it is. It is a mobile app that is getting live plant data from a JSON stream. So let's see, yeah, we'll go ahead and get all those, and next. Okay, it notices that I already have this on my computer. I'm going to put it in a different location. I'll put public, something like that. How about that? Okay, that'll work. And next, and import. Okay, so what it's doing is this app is getting data from a live feed of data. If I go to plantplaces.com and then I go to Perl, and just a moment, and mobile, and view plants JSON TL. I put in a common name of any plant, at least any plant that's in the database. And what it will do is it will return a JSON stream of that plant. So for example, here I've put in redbud, and I could also put in oak or maple or something like that, and it would give me results for plants that have that name somewhere. So here's a list of all the maples in the database. And the existing app already takes this and parses it and shows it. The only trick is that it shows it it shows it in a manner that is ideal for a mobile phone, but maybe not so ideal for a tablet. Now what we'll see is if I right-click on this application, I choose Debug As, and then I choose Android Application. I have two emulators running at the moment. I have a tablet and a traditional phone. I'm going to tell it to go ahead and deploy on the tablet. I did pause to save us a little bit of time there. I paused and brought it up on a phone, and we see this is what it looks like on the phone. So I can type in plant name, and let's go with our friend the redbud. And this is a traditional app using just activities and layouts. Now I hit search, and again, this is using live data off of plantplaces.com. You see a fairly good response time. The only trick is it looks like a phone app when you run it in a tablet. You see we have all this wasted screen real estate, and I'm going to click in here, and if I have any luck, I'll type redbud, and I'm going to hit search, and you see we're not using our real estate well, and that's what we're hoping to make better with our use of fragments. To see a very long list, probably could be using this better, could maybe have pictures in here, or what we're going to do with fragments, we're going to have a search pane on the left and a results pane on the right. So our first goal is simply to decouple the concept of the list activity we see here, decouple that into an activity that is showing a list fragment. So let's start with a list fragment. List fragment is one of the subclasses of fragment. And these subclasses a lot of times offer us an easy way to use a fragment with some conveniences added. For example, the list fragment knows it's going to be showing a list of items. And so we don't have to specify a layout to go with it. We just have to say, hey, I'm a list fragment. Okay. And we have to provide it with an adapter that's going to tell it which data to provide. Now, as I mentioned, I'm starting with an existing project here, and that's going to make it a little bit easier on us because we don't have to go through all the overhead of creating a new project and all the work that's associated with that. So I'm going to borrow some things as needed from an existing UI called Plant Results Activity, and this is a list activity. So we're going to make our list fragment look a lot like this. Okay, so I'm going to right-click on my package where I have my UI elements, and that is the package called com.plantplaces.plantplaces14fs. I'm going to choose New and then Class. And for the class, I'm going to say Plant Results Fragment. And the superclass here, this is where I do my magic. I'm going to say ListFragment. We're going to go with, I trust this guy a little bit more. This particular project I've set up to be only Android 4.0 and greater. And that is going to save me from a lot of backward compatibility headaches. In my research with the people who currently use the live plantplaces.com app, I found that the critical mass has finally swung to 4.0 and greater. That's going to offer us a lot of new features that come in 4.0 without having to do a whole lot of backward compatibility. So I choose Finish. And I see Plant Results Fragment. Okay, now from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to override the onCreate method. In Eclipse, I can just start typing the method name, hold Control, hit space, and Eclipse will give me options. The first one here is to override the method. It's kind of fallen off the screen there, but override the method in Fragment. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to override onCreate, and you see it does let me Control M so we can see this in high def. It does a little bit of magic here for me. It sets up the signature properly, and it uses the @override annotation, and then it calls the super call. Now, if I hold Control and press O, and then I hold Control and press O again, it's going to show me all of the methods that are local to this class, as well as methods that I inherit from the superclass fragment. And I'm going to look for one called setListAdapter, and sure enough, there is an option for setListAdapter. The adapter is something that takes a collection of objects and adapts it for use on the user interface. Okay, well here again, I was lucky enough to have this already in my plant results activity, and I'm going to do some copy paste, but rest assured you can find all of this code on GitHub. I just want to keep the size of this video reasonable. I want to focus on the things that are specific to our fragments and not talk so much about the things that are distractions. So for example, this thing called Plant Results Activity, it uses an async task because we are going to make a network call, and a network call cannot happen on the UI thread. So I'm going to borrow this async task. And by the way, I do have separate videos where I talk about async tasks. Just look at my playlist for async tasks or my YouTube page, and you'll certainly see those. And that async task is going to update our list adapter. Okay, so I'll just borrow this verbatim, to be honest with you. Async task allows us to run operations in a thread that's not the UI thread. In Android 4.0 and greater, we are not permitted to run network operations in the UI thread, and for good reason, because the UI thread is locked up and non-responsive for that entire time we're making a network call. Okay, so the users get frustrated naturally when we have apps that freeze up just because they're making a network call. We want the UI to continue to be responsive so the user can continue to use it. Okay, I need to make a couple of tweaks here. I need to change my this reference. Now this is a little bit tricky. We have to understand what this array adapter signature, what this method call, or actually it's a constructor call, sorry, what the constructor call consists of. First of all, what data type is the collection holding? And in this case, it's holding, let me F3 into this for a quick moment. It's holding a collection of plant objects where a plant is like a DTO, basically a class with getters and setters, as we're going to see here, a series of getters and setters. So that's what this adapter is handling. It's handling a collection of these plant objects. Now it's very easy to visualize what a plant object is. If you take a look at the JSON here, and I can even put this in the JSON viewer, we'll let that come up for a moment. But if you take a look at the raw JSON, you can tell that basically each set of curly braces represents a single plant. And that's why we're dealing with a collection of plants. As you look at this, we have each set of curly braces has name value pairs, ID, genus, species, cultivar, and common that represent a plant. And by the way, if you are trying this out, this URL that I have here, if I remember, I'll put this in the video comments. This is certainly publicly accessible. This is a free JSON stream that is showing a list of plants by common name. So that's something you can use to try out with your own apps. In any case, we have a list of plants, okay? And the next thing we need is what's called a context object. That's where we're getting our red line. That's something we're going to need to fix here. Okay, the next thing is the layout that this list is going to use. In this application, it's using simple list item 1, which just means one line of text per item that's being displayed. And finally, what's the collection that's being displayed? Well, the collection is this list of plants. So the array adapter glues these three things together. Now, we have to be careful here. The first argument is what we're going to call context. Context tells us about our application. It tells us things like what is the private directory where we can store files, and other things like that. So it tells the Android operating system about our application. Now, it has to be a context object. If we are in a normal activity, let's say like plant results activity, if I control T, we'll see that context is a high-up superclass. If we're in an inner class of an activity, what we have to do is we have to reach out to the enclosing activity and then use the keyword this to say, hey, the object that contains me is a context object. It's kind of confusing. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, it gets worse when we get into a fragment. If I go to fragment and control T, we're going to see there's nothing in here that says I am a class that extends from context. So what we actually have to do is some really goofy syntax. We have to go to the enclosing class, plant results fragment. What is that? Plant results fragment, that's the class that contains our async task. And then we have to do this to get a reference to the current object, but we're not done yet. Next, we have to do get activity, which says get the activity that owns me. And then that will finally get the context that we need so that we can show this list of plants in the list adapter. Okay, next I just need to initialize a plant service. I'm going to borrow that from my existing plant results activity. Let's see, I have iPlant service, plant service. This is just something that is doing basically access to our database and any business logic that we need to parse that JSON string. So plant service, I'm going to initialize that in the onCreate method that we have. Okay, and there we go, plant service equals new plant service. And now with that, I've finally taken care of my red lines. All I need to do in this onCreate method is I need to start this async task in its own thread. And once again for that, I'm going to borrow a little bit of action I have in my plant results activity. Okay, we are going to get the plant name, we're going to start the plant search task, and then we're going to call execute, which will start the do and background logic in its own thread. Okay. Oops, I'm in the wrong place. So we'll need to go up here to the onCreate method and paste. Okay, and save. Now guess what? We're redlined again. This.getIntent. Again, remember we're in a fragment, we're not in an activity. So sometimes we have to reach out and get access to the activity that contains us. So I need to say this.getActivity, and then that's a method called .getIntent.getStringExtra. What in the world is that? Well, this is a results page, and this is being called from the search page. And so as we call from the search page to the results page, we have to put in whatever text the user entered, and we're associating it with this key called plant name. So to get that data, we have to go from our fragment to the activity, from the activity to the intent, and then finally invoke getStringExtra and say, hey, can you give me the string that was passed in? Okay, so that will give us enough for now for our fragment. We're probably going to want to come back and enhance this in a bit later. But for now, this gives us enough to go with. What we need to do next is we need to make an activity that's going to contain this fragment, and we need to give that activity a layout. And the layout is essentially just going to be a pointer straight to this fragment. Okay, so for the activity, unfortunately, because I'm using an existing project, I already have plant results activity here. I already have a class named that. I don't want to destroy that. I want to keep that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a new class, and we're going to class plant results manager. How about that? Just give it a slightly different name. This is going to be an activity. Okay, so Android activity and finish. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to override the onCreate method. Remember our trick for that. We start typing onCreate. We don't even have to type the whole thing. Control space, choose the first option to override. And then in here we are going to want to set our layout with the setContentView method. Let me create the layout though, because the layout's the next thing we need. So under Res and then Layout, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say New, and we're going to say Android XML file. Okay, now we're going to butcher up the final product a little bit. So I'm going to choose Linear Layout, and we'll simply call this plant results, what do we call it? Plant results manager. That's fine. And next, and nothing needed there, so choose finish. Okay, linear layout, and I'm going to go to the graphical layout manager, and I'll definitely want to Control M so we can see this in high def. Okay, Control M. Okay, layouts. All I really need is a fragment. I'm going to drop the fragment right on there. Okay, and it's going to say, oh, okay, well, which fragment class do we want? I'm going to say plant results fragment, and it's a little bit goofy here because I have things from I have a lot of different projects open. But I choose plant results fragment, and now I'm going to go to plant results manager. And we see that we have our fragment within a linear layout. Let's see how this looks. I'm going to save. I'm going to Control M so I can go back to source code again. So now I have my fragment, I have my manager class, and I have a layout that's pulling out that fragment. This should be enough to get us in a good position. So what I need to do is I just need to make sure that this plant results manager gets called from the plant search activity, or in this case, the GPS of plant activity. So if I Control M on this, we're going to see I have a, here we go, search clicked. It's currently going to the plant results activity. I want to change this to go to the plant results manager. From the GPS screen to the plant results manager, I choose save. One thing it's always easy to forget to do, and I'm not going to forget to do it this time, I need to go to the Android manifest for this project, and I need to register my Plant Results Manager. Okay, so Android manifest. I can only call an explicit intent like that if I have it registered first in the Android manifest. So we'll choose Add, and am I in the right place? I'm going to choose Application first. From Application, I'm going to choose Add, and I'm going to say, sure, Activity, and OK. And then it's going to get a little tight on space here, so Control M. Name, I'm going to choose Browse, and we're going to say Plant Results Manager. Whoops, no, Plant Results Manager. Okay. Now, before we continue, I do realize I don't want to say forget something, but I just remembered something. The one thing I left untouched in the Plant Results Manager is I still need to tell it which layout to use. So I'm going to say Set Content View. Because I'm inheriting a method, I can just use the autocomplete and say r.layout.plantResultsManager. We have to associate this layout because the layout is what is our key into the fragment. So let me save this and Control M, and let's run this one more time. Okay, so I right click, I say Debug as Android Application. Okay, and we want it to come up on the phone. Okay, and here we go. Let's see if it works. Remember, our goal is to simply get an application that still works as it did before, but with a fragment, and then we can build on top of this. So I click, I say red button, and I say search. And it's going to hit a couple breakpoints I've set in here. So we'll go ahead and tell it to play. And sure enough, take a look at what we get. We get the exact same behavior that we had before, but this time with a fragment. Now, I don't like making YouTube videos that get excessively long. We're already at the 22, 23 minute mark on this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save and upload this video now. In our next video, we're going to take a look at how to marry this up to a details page, where you click on the plant and you get maybe a web view that goes straight to the Plant Places website. In a mobile phone, it's going to take you to a completely different activity, but in a tablet, it's going to stay on the same screen so that you can toggle from one to the other. So that's what's coming next. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to reading your feedback.